My name is Dustin Smith-Chudley, and I've been attending Cities Church since October of 2024. I grew up in a Christian household, but neither of my parents prioritized going to church or reading their Bible or praying. So as I got older, I just fell out of going to church and quit looking for who God was and what my purpose was in God's eyes. And because of that, I found that I was very lonely and struggled through a lot of my middle school years and high school. Then in 2018, I met my wife, Megan, and we spent 3 years together figuring out life without any real purpose or direction. And then in 2021, we got married and found out that she was pregnant with our first daughter, Maggie. After a year of trying to figure things out my own way, I realized I wasn't the father or the husband that I wanted to be. And I began to ask myself the question of why. And I could never quite answer that question on my own. One night after a fight with my wife, Megan, I stayed up late watching YouTube without any intentions of learning about God or praying or reading my Bible. And I got up to go get a drink or to eat, and when I came back, the video I was watching ended and a video teaching about Jesus Christ had come on. I spent the rest of my night learning about Jesus and praying and reading Bible verses, and I think that night I connected more with God than I ever had in my life before that point. Even though I had grown up going to church, I had never cared about going, and whenever I did go, I was always being disruptive and waiting for my parents to come down to get me for me to leave. So I never really gave myself to Jesus. But that night, as I was praying and reading my Bible, I felt called to give myself to Jesus and to trust in Him that He would guide me the way I was supposed to go in life and to help me find that purpose that I was looking for. I spent the year and some change that followed without attending a church. I prayed every day and I read my Bible almost as consistently, but I just never committed myself to a church. We had the opportunity to move to Brandon, so my wife, my daughter, and I moved into a little camper, and for the first 3 months we lived here, we stayed there in my parents' backyard while we looked for a place to live. I spent pretty much the whole time we were staying there praying every morning and every night that God would help us find a place for our family to grow and expand when we were ready. And after 3 months of praying, we found a 3-bedroom place, which gave us that room for our family to grow. And it just felt like God was answering the prayers that I was asking of Him. We moved in, and I could feel that God was trying to tell me that He had larger plans for us than where we were at that moment. We had become comfortable with just having Maggie and the place that we were in, so I began praying for God to give us our next big change in our lives. And a little over a month later, we found out that Megan was pregnant with our second daughter. And it felt like another answered prayer. It felt like God was saying, you're looking for purpose. Here's something to keep you moving in the right direction. The changes the Holy Spirit started making in my life fueled me to start looking for a church. And within a couple months of looking, we had seen an ad on Facebook for Candy Palooza and knew that it was our sign to give a church a try and to give Cities Church a try. So we brought Maggie, and she came dressed up as Rapunzel, one of her favorite princesses. Me and my wife were welcomed into service and treated like we had been attending for months already, or years even. And the atmosphere that the church brought was just incredible and one that's undescribable in any other way. Following Candy Palooza, I attended church pretty much every Sunday. I was praying and reading my Bible more than I ever had. And on February 23rd, I got baptized and wanted to continue to grow in my faith. So I texted Peyton about serving, and 2 weeks later, I began serving. All the people I was getting to meet and the atmosphere I was getting to see that you don't just see when you're coming to service on Sunday was something that was just undescribable. Looking back on before I started attending a church and believing in God, I couldn't have imagined myself with the life that I do now, with a family and children and a nice home for ourselves to call home. And I think every day it feels sort of surreal that I've been blessed and given this opportunity to live such a fantastic life. Today, I have more purpose than I ever thought possible growing up. This is not the end of my story. I know this is just the beginning of all that God has in store.